going to talk about a little thing called how do I know for sure that I can trust a plugin? It's a simple question, but not necessarily a simple answer. My name is Remkus de Vries, as Val said, manager partnership at Yoast. But before that, I had a lot of experience as a small agency, handling clients from relatively small websites to really big ones. So a lot of experience in the years, and I would say I started using WordPress very actively as of 2006. So basically, I'm coming up at 13 years of experience. So why am I qualified to talk about this topic? Well, I kind of share that a little bit. There's a whole bunch of experience on the building websites side of things, but there's also a few other things that made me quite aware of the consequence of a plugin doing what it's supposed to do, being secure, working as it's supposed to be working, and there's the as opposed to the versions that are not working. So you may be wondering what that exactly was. Well, I've been pretty active in the WordPress community as of 2006. I've been the Dutch forum lead and admin for the Dutch WordPress site since 2008, which means I've seen a lot of forum posts, a lot of questions with regards to plugins doing or not doing what they're supposed to be doing or what they're advertising. I've co-founded WordCamp Netherlands and I've co-founded WordCamp Europe, and as such, been in contact with a lot of plugin writers, a lot of agencies that are building stuff, asking questions about, you know, what is the good way to go about if I want to add this particular feature set to my site? What do I look at? So that's the sort of the background of how I started accumulating information, knowledge about what the possibilities are and what to pay attention to. Because we've all been there. Either you come up with an idea or your end client comes up with an idea like, hey, I've seen this really cool feature on this particular website. I'd like to have that too. What plugin should I use? Or maybe you've taken over the support of a particular website and you'll find yourself using 3 different plugins for forms, for instance. So which ones should you stick with? Which one should you use? Now, apart from any particular favorite things that you may or may not have, as in how does it work or how does it look, there's a few more things that we need to be looking at when we start introducing a plugin into our already existing website, because that's the focus of this webinar. So yeah, I've seen and worked with a lot of plugins over the year. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. I'm a curious person, meaning if I see a plugin that I like, at least as in how it's advertising itself, I tend to just install it, see what happens, look at the database, look at the options in there, play around with it. I don't care if it breaks, because I have a few test sites that I can play with that are pretty much totally okay to be ruined and start from scratch. That's a luxury I've given myself, and I'm quite aware that not everybody has that luxury. But like I said, I've been playing with plugins for a very, very long time. So, really, how to know for sure you can trust a plugin? Well, simple question, not a simple answer. There is no guarantee. Let's start with that, because that really is what it is. There is no guarantee. So the steps that we're going to show you are steps that you can reproduce. They are steps that are pretty much covering the whole gamut of, let's check this before you actually start installing it on your website. Having said that, this is code. Code will always have bugs. Code will always have small things, maybe even big things that you really want to, be sure that are not in there, but they're going to be there. So there will be security updates, there will be feature updates, there will be bug updates, all of those are part of plugins. So that's not necessarily a thing that we can mitigate. That is something that's going to happen. That is something that we need to take as a truth. That is, we can pretend it's not there, and we can pretend we do our due diligence. But there are certain plugins out there that have thousands and thousands of lines of code. There's no way you can be as thorough as you would like to be. As in, there's no way you're going to make sure that nothing will be introduced that will cause any trouble. Having said that, there's a whole bunch of things that we could look at to make sure that that risk of introducing a bad apple is minimized. So the first question has to be this one. So do you really need that plugin? If you're building websites for clients, I'm pretty sure you've had the question, I'd like to introduce this particular plugin because I've seen what it does. Now, the first question you should be asking your client, and make sure to verify it, is, do you really need it? And of course, the client's going to say, I just told you that I needed it, so please, just install it or whatever. But it saves a little bit of the effort of asking, are you sure you need it? Do you really need it? It also helps you being a little bit more critical about what you introduce in your system. And when I say system, I mean your entire stack of what you have, like your WordPress installation, your theme, your plugins, the whole system you have installed. So before you say yes to your client, make sure you absolutely are certain that that is something they need, as in they cannot do without. One of the reasons you need to be slightly leaning against let's not introduce something new is because if you end up giving a yes to every single time you have that question, you end up with a lot of plugins that are sometimes overlapping, sometimes really not that needed, or it doesn't matter how well they are programmed, they bring in another security risk, maybe a speed risk. There's a whole bunch of things that you may want to try to avoid as much as possible. So this is the first question. The second question is, where do I start? So I took an example that is very near and dear to my heart. This is the Yoast SEO plugin that introduces a whole bunch of SEO features for your website. And I'd like to show you by looking at what the actual information is about that you have in front of you. So basically, this is the plugin overview on the WordPress plugin repository over at wordpress.org/plugins, in this particular case, /WordPress-SEO. You can find that. You can see a lot of information here already that we're going to start working with. So one of the first things that should stand out a little bit is the stuff that you see on the right-hand side in the bottom where it says version, last updated, active installations, WordPress version, tested up to, and PHP version. Now, on the left, you'll have the description, and it basically describes what the plugin does. So I'd like you to enter your bit of a cautious mind when you start reading things. People advertise all types of things, and there's all types of marketing language you'll see in the descriptions. So be slightly cautious when you start reading what a particular plugin does. So let's just take this one. You need SEO for your website because not only you want to have it easy to be publishing, because that's what you're using WordPress, but you also want to be found. So you've decided on Yoast SEO as a plugin, or at least as a potential candidate. So let's see what type of information we have that you can use. So when researching a plugin, the first thing you do is look at the feature descriptions. As you saw here, it starts at the left bottom, and it starts describing what the plugin does. I can't scroll down, but if you start looking up the plugin, you'll see there's a whole bunch of features being explained what they do. You look at the last time the plugin was updated. Now, this is a very important indication because not only does it mean if it's a recent date stamp, not only does it mean it's being actively developed, it also is an indication of how active it is. So, for instance, the Yoast SEO plugin has a release schedule of at least once every 2 weeks, which is a good sign of very active development. Now, that doesn't mean that a plugin that hasn't been touched for 2 months is one to stay away from, but that does mean that if we're anything past 18 months, you should be a little bit wary, like why is this plugin not updated? What's going on here? Especially if you're aware, WordPress 5.0 introduces the Gutenberg core editor. Now, with that came a lot of changes. And those changes mean they need to be reflected in any plugin that works with the editor. Now, a SEO plugin absolutely works with an editor. So, for instance, if you were to find an SEO plugin that hasn't been updated in the last 6 months, I'm pretty certain you're going to come across a limited plugin when it comes to actually being able to use it inside the current block editor. So that is something to look at. It's not a black and white type of thing, but the more recent it is, the more of an indication of a actively being developed plugin it is, and that is a good sign. And I'll explain a little bit more about this later, but this is actually a very important metric. So the number of active installations. Let's just say you're looking for a particular plugin to solve your problem X. Now, let's just say there's 5 plugins that are actually solving X. One of the things you could look at is the number of active installations, which means if one of the 5 plugins has 20,000 installations and the rest have, hovering around maybe 1,000, 1,500, it's a clear indication that the one having 20,000 installations is either on the market for a longer time or much more actively being developed, maintained, expanded, taken care of. So it's a thing to look at. These are all very straightforward things. The one that is a little bit less straightforward because it's very subjective is the reviews. But I do encourage you to start reading the reviews. So let's go over that. This is the description. This is where you see what the plugin does. And when you look down a little bit, you see taking care of your WordPress SEO. It actually explains in features what our plugin actually does. So it's not just it optimizes your SEO. No, it explains to you exactly what it does. You get the advanced XML sitemaps. You get full control over site breadcrumbs, set canonicals, et cetera, et cetera. So that's information that is helpful for you to actually make a valid decision on, do I need this? Is this for me? Active installations, you will find that here. In this particular case, we have 5+ million installations. So that's a pretty good sign that whatever the plugin does is at least very popular. A lot of people agree with this being the #1 SEO plugin. You see ratings at the bottom right of the plugin overview screen. And ratings is another very interesting metric as it tells you a little bit about what other people think of this particular plugin. So in general, I would say, there's always 1 stars. There's always 2 stars. And, depending on the popularity of the plugin or how well it's built, the 3 stars and the 4 stars will be there as well. But the 5 stars are actually the interesting ones. So the ones I would check is if I have 5 stars and I have a lot, how does that balance out the 4, 3, 2, and 1 stars? I would even go as far as if we're checking reviews, I would actually check both the 5 stars and the 1 and 2, because I would be curious about what they're actually saying. Now, sometimes that's somebody who doesn't actually fully understand what type of plugin they're getting into. So they may not understand everything about the plugin, which will make them give a bad review. But those particular types of bad reviews should be easy to figure out which one you should discard or which one are the valid ones. Same goes for the 5 stars. There's the quick ones that go like, perfect plugin, wonderful, thank you, and then they're done. But there's also people who actually write out 2 to 3 paragraphs explaining why this particular plugin is actually working for them. So again, you need to be a little bit skeptical when you read everything, but you really should read everything, because it'll tell you a little bit more about how that plugin works. So when you click on rating, the link I just showed you, this is what you get. You get an overview of, and technically this is a forum. This is why it says search this forum. That's because basically that's how the WordPress.org architecture works. But you'll see there's a 5 star, a 5 star, and then puzzling to say the least. So somebody did not get it, and it'd be interesting to read why. But then again, the one below it says Yoast for a beginner, and that one gave a 5 star review. So really, it's a very subjective thing, and you need to double check and make sure that whatever type of plugin, and again, and this is the example of the Yoast SEO plugin, but whatever plugin you need, it may not be an SEO plugin you need currently, but it may be a different type of plugin. But the type of things to look at are still the same thing to look at. That doesn't change. So here I would still check. So when you see the 24,666 reviews, all those are links, and you can actually click on just to see the 2 stars or the 4 stars or the 5 stars. And basically, if you see the overview underneath the topic, you click on very good, you actually get to see what type of review it is. And again, some come with maybe 1 sentence, some actually put in some time and effort. All of these are ways to gauge what you're actually looking at. Why is this particular plugin worth your time to install on your site? So next on things to check out is the plugin support. Now, it's good to remember that plugin support is, for the most part, a free, non-enforceable type of thing. Everything you find on the plugin repository for WordPress.org is open source. And open source basically means you get to use it any which way you like, but you don't get to demand you need that particular support. Obviously, if there's a huge bug, you get to be disgruntled, you get to be angry, you get to be sad, all of those emotions, but you actually have no legal way of making somebody respond. Having said that, if and when a plugin is actively developed, you'll see that they are actually taking care of their plugin support. So what does that mean? Well, it means that they are responding in a correct and prompt fashion. They are usually fast in responding. They also are thinking about, what if you're coming here for the first time? So they have like a read this first, which explains how their support works. And in some cases, in our instance, for instance, if you really want or need support, the easiest way would be to get a premium subscription. That means you get the premium version of the plugin, but with that, you get support. So anything you come across or that you might need would be covered by our premium support. And there you can demand to be helped in whatever and with whatever issue you have. So that would be explained in the read this first. Now, the fourth thing to look at is how long do topics stay unresolved. So this is pretty much the same idea about what's the last time the plugin was updated. Here we look at how do certain questions get answered? Do they get answered at all? And the forum actually allows you to see that. So here you see a good example of read this before you post. So Yoast de Vries wrote out a bunch of frequently asked questions, a bunch of ideas, and also, you know, if you really do need premium support, this is where you need to go. All of these are an indication of a company, in this particular case, Yoast, taking their support issues seriously. It basically says, hey, look, we understand that, you know, we're not technically obligated to answer your support requests here. However, having said that, we do take them serious and we do answer them, because in turn, that will make you a happy customer. And if you're a happy customer, you know, we have a premium version that will even make you a more happy customer. So that particular mindset, when you see that on the description, when you see that in the reviews, and when you also see that in the actual forum, the support threads, you get a sense of what the company is about. And that's basically really what this is about. So any company, you know, being serious in this particular market of ours, the WordPress market, they understand that if they want to gain our trust, the first thing they have to do is make sure that they come across trustworthy. And explaining what your product does eloquently, helping out on any, even if it's free, any questions in the support threads, taking care of your reviews and making sure that they are on the higher level and not on the lower level. All of these are a clear indication of a company making sure that they understand the matter and the importance of producing quality. And that is really what you're looking for. You're looking for signs of quality. Now, this is all on the surface still. This is all, you know, you can do this without even actively having to install the plugin. This is just looking at the information. And depending on the size of the plugin, or how, you know, you can do this in 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe you need a little bit more time and you need some proper investigation, and you know, you'll be in this for 10-15 minutes. Either way, it is something that you shouldn't skip. It is not something you should be, you know, it'll be fine. I just want to go download it, install it, be done with it. That, as tempting as it sounds, that's not the way to go. So frequently asked questions. That's an interesting one, because it'll tell you a little bit more about what is the mindset of people starting this, and what type of question do they have. The active topics, that's an interesting view to look at. And the last one is the unresolved topics. So unresolved basically says all of these questions that have been asked, which ones have not been answered. And just click on through and see what they're actually about. Sometimes it's very straightforward stuff. Sometimes it's more complex stuff, so you understand it takes time to properly respond. Either way, it gives you an overview of the mindset of the company. And again, they're showing you their trust. So, satisfied so far, right? You've looked at it, you've read it, you're convinced the plugin does what you want it to do, you actually decided you needed it, you've double-checked every single thing you have available for you, you looked at the reviews, you looked at the open support threads, all of that, you've looked at it and you went like, okay, this looks like a plugin that would actually do what I want it to do. So what's up? Next, testing. So testing is not necessarily one of the most complex things to do, but before you actually do the physical testing, you kind of go, let me just double check in Google if I can find a little bit more information about who is the author of the plugin. What do people say about them? or him or her. Have they published more plugins? If so, that's a clear indication of people being more inclined to stick around longer. Is there a premium version? Now you might wonder, why is that an interesting, why do I Google that? Why do I search for that? For the simple reason that a premium version means whoever published the plugin is in it to make sure that they are providing a good solution. And the premium version says, we'd like to be paid for it as well, and the more you pay for it, the better the actual version becomes. So it's an indication of a company or a person having a vested interest in staying there, being there, and in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, still be available to you with updates for the plugin and all of that. There's, over the years that I've played with plugins and stuff, there's numerous plugins that at one time were created because they, maybe the author had time, maybe they were a student and felt like this is an itch I need to scratch. They wrote the plugin, they released the plugin, they published the plugin, and maybe they were active in updating it for a couple of years, but maybe they went on to do different jobs, maybe no time anymore, whatever. Having a premium version basically says, I am interested in maintaining this plugin, and please do come and install my plugin. So is there a premium version is one of the things you need to be looking for in search for a plugin name and reviews. So on the WordPress.org site, you will find reviews, but obviously those are not the only reviews out there. There are plenty of reviews written by people with blogs, and you'll find those interesting as well. So the adventures mode is the next one. That basically means we get a little bit more technical. It requires you to set up a local development site. Now, if that's not something you normally do, I would say Google that, because there are plenty of really, relatively easy solutions out there to set up a local development site. One of my favorites is Local by Flywheel. And what it basically does, it allows you to create a local site that is only available on your computer. And it allows you to play with it. It allows you to make mistakes. You can easily create a new site. You can easily delete it. You can easily start from scratch. So get yourself a local development site and make sure that you install the plugin, test it, play around with it. And a very important metric to do is speed, quickness. So the Query Monitor plugin is a plugin that actually allows you to test everything you do on, everything the plugin does on your site. So you get to see what the response is. Some plugins they look good, they are sold good, they look trustworthy and everything, but when it turns out you actually install it, they slow down your site significantly. Now, Query Monitor is a plugin that will actually show you the before and the after. So you can deactivate the plugin, you can double check again with Query Monitor, and if indeed we went from 4 seconds loading to 15 seconds loading, you know for sure you have a plugin you don't want on your live site. So Adventures mode basically says play around. The Adventures detective mode goes one step further, and it basically says export your site, import it into your local development site that you just created. And there's plenty of tutorials with whatever tool you'd like to use. Again, my favorite is Local by Flywheel, but Desktop Server is also a very good one. And it allows you to relatively easy turn any export of your live site into a local dev. And with that, you get to test not just on a simple WordPress site that you just install and maybe import a few pages or stuff like that. No, you actually get a full copy of your live site, and it works locally. So again, install the plugin, see if it breaks anything, see if all the screens are, can you still navigate to the entire dashboard? Does everything work as it did? If you want to go real adventurous, maybe test with an older version of the plugin you would like to introduce and do an update. See what happens. Does it do what it's supposed to do? Does it break anything? Again, test with Query Monitor plugin because it will tell you how well you're doing it. And the whole idea is that you do a little due diligence on the code side of things. So you install that plugin and you make sure you click through the site, you click through the plugin, the settings, and whatever it does, and make sure that the output is exactly what you expect it to be. So when all of this is satisfactory, you basically have an all systems go. You've made sure that the plugin is actually well maintained, it's up to date, it's used by more people, questions get answered quickly. There's even the premium version, which makes you, you're more secure about the future of the company or the person behind the plugin, and that makes it a safer route to go with that particular plugin. So if that all checks your green boxes, then we have an all systems go. So congratulations, you are now in a committed relationship with a new plugin. And I kid you not, this is exactly what it is. You are in a committed relationship because from that moment on, you have introduced something into your website that you are going to rely on. You're going to rely on it to work perfectly in WordPress 5.0 when you introduced it, but you also are going to expect it to work perfectly in WordPress 5.1, 5.2, maybe even 6.7. It's not just that was it, done. Next one. It means upkeeping. It means you need to still make sure that plugin is actually updated as it was. So it doesn't end there. It is introduced into your site now, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have the luxury of not looking at whatever next version of that plugin introduces. You still need to be reading the change log, see what's up, and see if you need to change or make sure that whatever you have as a total site is still working perfectly. So that's basically the path that I use whenever I introduce a new plugin. I double check all these things, and again, sometimes it takes 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes it takes me 15, 20 minutes. And if it's a large plugin, I don't mind to actually start spending more than an hour. For the simple reason, the better I test it, the more I make sure of what I actually see here is what it's supposed to be doing. The happier it's going to make me. And the more headaches I get to prevent. So this is me asking you if you have any questions.
Yeah, surely nobody wants headaches, Remkus.
I can imagine it. Can't imagine anyone being a fan, so yeah.
Yeah, got a few questions coming in through Twitter here. In the Q&A tab, nothing so far. So I'm just gonna go along and read some of these. We still have well over 5 minutes, so let's see, maybe we can go over.
Yep.
The first question that came actually when you actually started was, if I'm looking for a particular plugin and several seem to match my needs. Now I'm gonna make a parenthesis here. I think you sort of answered this while you were going, but anyways, please try to respond if you can. So if I'm looking for a particular plugin and several seem to match my needs, should I do additional steps before deciding on one of them?
Depends. If you can't, if there's 3 plugins and you cannot make a decision based on the information that I went through in the last 27 slides, then ultimately it comes down to your gut feeling. Because if there's no information on the outside looking in what the best solution would be, I would at least look at what the plugin does when you actually install it. So the local development side would be my next thing to make sure if I can make a choice. Like, does the one sway me a little bit more than the other? If you are a developer yourself, there's a few more other things and stuff you can look at, like code quality. So you actually open up the plugin in a code editor and you start clicking around. I would say that's the only way to go. Ultimately, if even after that there's still 3 good plugins, just pick one.
Pick all 3, one at a time, not all of them together.
No, I wouldn't do that. That's introducing a whole bunch of other issues that you really don't want on your website.
Since you've used Yoast as an example, I see a very good question that relates to search, especially search results.
Yeah.
So this one says, can I select a plugin also based on what position it has in the search results page of WordPress plugin repository when I search?
So the way that the algorithm is built for when you search for a plugin on WordPress.org, it is not necessarily an indication of the better plugins are ranking higher. It's more of an indication of what you search for and how it relates to the plugins actually out there. So even though I'd like that search to be better, it's not very feasible to make, rankings do, like the amount of reviews. I'm not actually sure if it's currently being implemented, like if the vast majority is 5-star reviews. In my head, it would make sense to have those types of plugins rank higher when you search for it. I don't know if that's actually the case. So I don't have a good explanation about that.
That's definitely something that maybe can be developed, though. Okay, next. Should I always have a test WordPress site to test the plugin before installing on my live site? You covered this, but yes, it was a question that showed up.
Yes.
I wanted to read it. Another one regarding, this is an interesting one. The date that the plugin has been first published in the WordPress repository, does it have any effect on how quick it is found while searching? You just spoke about searching.
No, not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. How dangerous is it to install a plugin on a newer version of WordPress that the plugin is labeled as non-compatible with?
So it doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous. So the way that is displayed, it's in the readme.txt of a plugin. You have a field where you can say tested up to, and that tested up to is a field that they need to change when they update the plugin. So it's one of those things that can be overlooked. Having said that, if the plugin is being actively developed, it's a fair indication that that particular metric is changed every single time they do an update, because they would have an automated way of doing it. So that leads me to the conclusion that if you are wanting to install a plugin that says tested up to 4.9 and you are running 5.0, I would send out a tweet. I would send out a message to whoever built the plugin, look around for them on the internet. They are probably easily findable, and just ask the question, or maybe even add a support thread. I don't think it's going to be very, very difficult, but when WordPress introduces a big change like it did with Gutenberg, I'd be a little bit more hesitant.
Good call. Dustin is asking in the Q&A tab, can you describe how you use Query Monitor?
So Dustin, Query Monitor is a pretty straightforward plugin in the sense that once you've activated, you have an entry in the toolbar, and that toolbar entry basically tells you on whichever page you are on your website, whether that's on the dashboard or on the front end, it gives you a whole bunch of information of how that particular page performs with regards to queries. Now, it goes well beyond this particular webinar to explain much more in depth, but there's a whole bunch of people who wrote very interesting posts about how to use Query Monitor. I would start Googling for that, because there's a lot of options out there with that plugin.
We can surely come back with an additional webinar, right, Chris?
We could. We could.
Okay, Jamie has a longish question here, so I'm going to try. I think it's spread into three different messages. I'm going to try to read it through, or of course you can also read it, but just for the audience.
I'm reading it.
For someone not comfortable with importing a local host, if using cPanel, there is a great cloning tool in Installatron to make a copy to domain.tld/staging folder.
Yeah.
It's just important to either remove this application after testing is complete or make sure to make it part of their regular site plugin theme version update, whatever. Was the example you gave for localhost an import plugin, or is it something you need to export to database/WP content to use locally?
Yeah, so one of my assumptions is that you always are backing up your website, and in that backup you have all your files and your database. And in your file, your database and your files can be imported into any other installation, whether that is a staging site or whether that is a local development site. If you want to do that on a staging site on your as in the subfolder as that was described, I wouldn't be too much of a fan for that. I would prefer to have it like staging.domainname.tld. For the simple reason is you don't want to cross your live site traffic into Google as well as your staging site. Your staging site should not be accessible for the public view.
So it is not indexed at any time, right?
So it's not indexed, yeah.
Awesome. Charlie is asking, how do you decide on a premium plugin that has no free version or trial?
That's a tough one.
Go for it.
So me personally, I've been in the WordPress community for a very long time. 9 out of 10 times I know one of the developers, or I know someone who would know one of the developers. So I would just ask, like, can you vouch for them? What are your experiences about that? It gets more difficult if you are one of the 10 and you have no idea who the person is. I would say a good example way back when was when WP Rocket was introduced. It's been a premium plugin from day one, so there's never been a free version. There's never been a trial option. You would just have to kind of see what it did. Because I knew who built it by name and by reputation, you get more lenient. If that's not, if those people are not, if you're not in the WordPress community and that very familiar with whoever is whom, it's a gamble. It's a choice. You would look at the same metric. You would be as you would try to get as much information as possible. Bottom line, most plugins have a price range somewhere between $30 and $90. It's worth taking a risk if you think the plugin looks good and you've Googled it and you've reviewed all the things. I would say go for it. But again, it's your money, so you need to make that decision yourself. But
it is a risk assumption in a way.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, talking about risk, I'm going to end here with a question regarding security. So again, as I said, just to repeat for somebody to join later, this webinar will be available as a recording, and Remkus will go through all of the questions. We'll have a list of all the questions and his answers on the page of the webinar that you registered to. I'm going to go read now the final questions for this live show. Ryan is asking, if you're a developer, should you trust that you can adapt a plugin in a secure way?
I'm not entirely sure if I understand Ryan's question fully, but should you trust that you can adapt a plugin in a secure way? If a plugin is developed with change in mind, then yes. So that means there would be filters, there would be hooks, there would be ways to interject.
Maybe keep it secure along the future updates.
Yeah, because you want the plugin to, you want it to be able to update continuously. So if you're integrating into that plugin, then yes, you want to do that in a secure fashion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Remkus. I hope that was interesting for you as it was for us. Definitely enjoyed it. I've seen a lot of questions coming in. Again, if you guys still have questions, you can tweet us your questions, and Remkus will surely go on and answer them. We'll have the video recording available for everyone who wants to watch it again or use it as a resource. All the recordings of all of our webinars, you'll be finding them on sucuri.net/webinars. Feel free to go and watch the other ones we have here. Again, Remkus, most likely we'll be having you again if you have the time.
Happy to.
I'm gonna say here thank you. I'm gonna let you say goodbye to the people watching, and we'll be hearing each other most likely very soon.
Yep. Well, we'll see each other at YoastCon, which, by the way, is where you all should be going in 2 weeks.
February 7, 8, right?
Yep.
Yes. YoastCon is the hashtag.
Yes, it is.
For everyone watching, you might want to look it up. Okay, have a great evening, morning, day, whatever the local time you're on is now. And again, thank you.
And thank you.